The thing about betrayal is that it never announces itself with fanfare. There's no dramatic music, no warning bells. Sometimes it's just the faint smell of unfamiliar perfume on a collar or a phone screen that flips face down just a little too quickly. For me, it was the sound of laughter. I stood outside our apartment door, groceries weighing down both arms, keys dangling from my pinky finger as I fumbled with the lock. The bag was cutting circulation to my hand, and I'd just worked a 12-hour shift at the marketing firm where I was a junior account manager, barely making enough to cover my half of our expenses. But I'd stopped at the expensive grocery store anyway, the one with the imported cheese he loved, because it was our 3-year anniversary, and I wanted tonight to be special. The lock clicked open, and that's when I heard it. A woman's laugh, high and lilting, followed by his deeper chuckle, the one he used to save just for me. My hand froze on the doorknob. Maybe it was his sister. Maybe it was a colleague. Maybe it was anyone except what my gut was screaming it had to be. I pushed the door open slowly, quietly. The apartment I'd spent 3 years helping him afford, the place where I'd sacrificed my own dreams of graduate school to support his entrepreneurial ventures that never quite materialized. They were on our couch, where we'd spent countless nights watching movies, where I'd fallen asleep on his shoulder more times than I could count. She was straddling him, her designer dress hiked up around her thighs, his hands tangled in her perfectly highlighted hair. The grocery bags hit the floor with a crash that could have woken the dead. They sprang apart like teenagers caught by parents. The woman, stunning in that effortless way that probably cost thousands in salon visits, had the decency to look embarrassed. She grabbed her clutch and practically ran past me, muttering something that might have been an apology. But him, my boyfriend of 3 years, the man I'd put through coding boot camp, the man whose rent I'd covered more times than he'd covered mine, he had the audacity to look annoyed. "Mara," he said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "This isn't what it looks like." I stared at him, at this man I'd loved so completely that I'd made myself smaller to fit into his life. The laugh that bubbled up from my throat was sharp enough to cut glass. "Really, Kyle? That's the line you're going with? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were about 30 seconds from having sex with another woman on the couch I helped you buy." He stood up, tucking in his shirt with infuriating calm. "You're overreacting. Nothing happened. Nothing happened?" My voice was rising now, 3 years of swallowed complaints and ignored dreams fueling every syllable. "Nothing happened? Kyle, her lipstick is on your neck." He touched his neck reflexively, then had the nerve to shrug. "Look, Mara, maybe this is actually a good thing. Maybe we needed this wake-up call." "A wake-up call?" I was repeating his words like a broken record, but my brain couldn't process fast enough to form original thoughts. "What are you talking about?" He sighed, and in that sigh was every bit of condescension I'd been too in love to notice before. "Come on, Mara. Be honest with yourself. We've been growing apart for months. You're always working, always tired. We barely have sex anymore. I'm working because I'm paying for everything." The words erupted from somewhere deep and wounded. "I'm exhausted because I'm covering your rent, your car payment, your credit cards. I gave up graduate school for you." "Nobody asked you to do that," he said, and those 6 words, delivered with such casual cruelty, were the ones that finally broke something fundamental inside me. "You made that choice. Don't put that on me." I looked at him then, really looked at him. At the weak chin he hid with careful stubble, at the eyes that had seemed soulful but were really just empty, at the mouth that had promised me forever while he was planning his exit. "You're right," I said quietly, and he looked surprised, maybe even hopeful that I was about to forgive him. "I did make that choice. And it was the wrong one." I walked to our bedroom, pulled out the battered suitcase I'd brought when I moved in, and started throwing in my clothes. Not all of them, just enough for a few days. Just enough to get out. "What are you doing?" He appeared in the doorway, suddenly concerned now that I was actually leaving. "What does it look like?" "I'm leaving." "Mara, come on. Let's talk about this like adults." I whirled on him, a dress clutched in my hand like a weapon. "Adults? You want to talk like adults? Fine. Here's some adult truth for you, Kyle. You're a user. You've been using me for 3 years, and I was so stupidly in love with you that I let you. That's not fair. Your startup that you needed $10,000 for? Never materialized. That coding bootcamp I paid for? You got certified 6 months ago and still don't have a job. The rent I've been covering while you figure things out? I'm done. Find another woman to bankroll your failures. His face darkened, and there it was, the real Kyle, the one I'd been making excuses for all this time. You think you're so much better than me? You're just a junior account manager, Mara. You're not exactly setting the world on fire. The words were designed to hurt, to make me feel small, to make me stay. And 3 years ago, they might have worked. Instead, I zipped up my suitcase, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked toward the door. Where are you going to go? He called after me. You don't have any friends. You gave them all up to spend time with me, remember? I turned back one last time. You know what? You're right again. I did give them up. I gave up everything for you. But the good news is, Kyle, the only place to go from rock bottom is up. And I'm going to climb so high that you'll need a telescope to see me. You'll be back, he said with infuriating confidence. You need me. I smiled then, a real smile that felt like the first honest thing I'd done in years.
No, Kyle.
You needed me. And now you're going to have to figure out how to pay rent all by yourself. Good luck with that. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed through my entire body. I walked down the hallway of that mediocre apartment building, got into my 10-year-old car with its perpetual check engine light, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I had about $300 in my personal account, everything else having gone to our shared expenses. No apartment lined up, no backup plan, no safety net. But I also had something I hadn't had in 3 years, freedom. I ended up at a motel on the edge of town, the kind of place that charged by the week and didn't ask questions. The room smelled like industrial cleaner and disappointment, and the bedspread was a pattern that could hide any number of sins. I sat on the edge of that questionable bed and let myself fall apart. Not because I missed him. Not even because I'd wasted 3 years of my life. I cried because I'd let someone convince me I was worth less than I was. I'd let someone make me small. And worst of all, I'd done it willingly, eagerly, thinking that love meant sacrifice instead of partnership. My phone buzzed. A text from Kyle. When you're done being dramatic, we should talk. I blocked his number. Then I opened my laptop and started looking for apartments, for opportunities, for any possible way to rebuild my life from the ashes of the biggest mistake I'd ever made. And that's when I saw it. An ad for a graduate program, fully funded, specializing in digital marketing and business strategy. The application deadline was in 3 days. It was in another state, a fresh start, a chance to become who I'd been before Kyle convinced me to be less. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second-guess. I spent that entire night in that depressing motel room writing the application essay of my life. I poured every ounce of pain and anger and hope into those pages, talking about dreams deferred and second chances and the kind of person I was determined to become. I clicked submit at 4 a.m, then fell asleep still dressed, my laptop warm on my chest. 3 weeks later, I got the acceptance email. Full scholarship, stipend included, start date in 6 weeks. I never looked back. The thing about transformation is that it doesn't happen in a montage with uplifting music. It happens in 1,000 small moments of choosing yourself over comfort, of pushing through when every muscle screams to stop, of believing in a version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. Graduate school was brutal. Not because the work was impossible, but because I was competing with students who'd come straight from prestigious undergrad programs, who had internships at Fortune 500 companies, who spoke multiple languages and had studied abroad in places I'd only dreamed of visiting. I was the girl from the motel who'd funded her move with a maxed-out credit card. But I also had something they didn't. I had a bone-deep understanding of what failure felt like, and an even deeper determination never to feel that way again. My first semester, I worked 3 part-time jobs on top of a full course load. I was a research assistant for Dr. Helena Chen, the program director whose reputation could make or break careers. I waitressed on weekends. I did freelance copywriting late into the night, building a portfolio one forgettable product description at a time. I barely slept. I lived on coffee and spite, fueled by the memory of Kyle's face when he told me I'd never amount to anything. And slowly, gradually, I started to excel. My marketing strategies caught Dr. Chen's attention. She started assigning me bigger projects, introduced me to industry contacts, brought me into meetings with executives who were considering partnerships with the university. "You have something rare, Mara," she told me one day, reviewing a campaign proposal I'd spent weeks perfecting. "You understand not just what people want, but why they want it. That's the difference between a good marketer and a great one." I thought about Kyle, about how I'd analyzed and catered to his every whim, trying to figure out what would make him happy, what would make him love me the way I loved him. Apparently, those skills transferred. "Thank you," I said, trying not to cry at the simple act of being seen. "I'm serious," Dr. Chen continued, her sharp eyes assessing me over her reading glasses. "I have a contact at Morrison Associates. They're one of the top marketing firms in the country. I'd like to recommend you for their summer internship program." Morrison Associates. The name alone was enough to make my heart race. They represented brands that were household names that shaped culture and conversation. Getting an internship there would be like winning the lottery. I would be honored, I managed, trying to sound professional instead of desperately grateful. The interview process was grueling. 3 rounds, each one more intense than the last. They threw impossible scenarios at me, asked me to develop full campaigns on the spot, challenged every assumption I made. I thrived. Because here's what Kyle never understood: pressure doesn't break everyone. Some people, it turns into diamonds. I got the internship, and I was brilliant at it. Not because I was naturally talented, though I discovered I had a knack for seeing patterns and opportunities others missed, but because I worked like my life depended on it. Every project was personal. Every campaign was proof that I was more than the girl who'd been cheated on, more than the woman who'd almost disappeared into someone else's mediocre life. The senior partners noticed. By the end of the summer, they offered me a full-time position starting immediately after graduation. I accepted before they could finish the sentence. My second year of graduate school was different. I had money now, real money, not just enough to survive, but enough to actually live. I got an apartment that didn't smell like failure. I bought clothes that fit properly. I got a haircut at a salon instead of a chain store. More importantly, I got good, really good. I started winning awards for my academic work, publishing papers, speaking at conferences. Dr. Chen became not just a mentor but a friend, someone who saw my potential and pushed me to reach it. "You're going to do remarkable things," she told me at my graduation, and for the first time in my life, I believed it. Morrison Associates was everything I'd hoped and more. The work was challenging, the environment was competitive, and I loved every exhausting minute of it. I started as a junior strategist, but I didn't stay there long. 6 months in, I led a campaign for a struggling beverage company that increased their market share by 30% in 3 months. The strategy went viral, was studied in marketing courses, got written up in industry publications. I got promoted to senior strategist. A year after that, I developed a digital transformation strategy for a legacy retail brand that saved them from bankruptcy and made them relevant to a new generation. I was promoted to creative director. But it wasn't enough. I was hungry in a way I'd never been before, driven by something more than revenge or proving Kyle wrong. I was driven by the intoxicating realization that I was genuinely good at this, that I could see things others couldn't, that I had value independent of any relationship or validation. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. I took on the accounts nobody else wanted and turned them into success stories. I mentored younger employees the way Dr. Chen had mentored me, paying forward the grace that had been shown to me. And then, 3 years to the day after I'd walked out of that apartment with nothing but a suitcase and a shattered heart, I got the call. "Mara?" It was Sandra Morrison herself, the founder of Morrison Associates, a legend in the industry. "Do you have a minute?" I'd been reviewing quarterly reports in my office, a space I'd earned through 3 years of relentless work. "Of course. I'm opening a new branch in your old hometown. We're expanding aggressively, and we need someone who can run the operation, someone who understands the local market but has the sophistication of our national brand. I want you to be the director." My heart stopped. Director. Of the entire branch. At 31 years old, I would be running a multi-million-dollar operation. But it meant going back. Back to the city where Kyle had destroyed me. Back to the place I'd fled from like it was on fire. "Can I ask why me?" I said carefully. Sandra laughed, that sharp, knowing laugh of a woman who'd built an empire from nothing. "Are you kidding? You've transformed every account you've touched. You have a 98% client retention rate. Your team would follow you into fire. And frankly, Mara, you're being headhunted by every firm in the country. I need to promote you before I lose you." "I appreciate your confidence. This isn't confidence, it's statistics. You're the best we have. The branch is yours if you want it. Full autonomy, generous salary, benefits package that includes equity in the company. You'd be set for life." I thought about the girl in the motel, writing her graduate school application at 4 a.m. I thought about every double shift, every sleepless night, every moment I'd chosen to become better instead of bitter. "I want it," I said. "Excellent. You start in 3 weeks. I'm having HR send over the contract today." I hung up and sat very still in my office, the city lights glittering beyond my window. I'd made it. Against all odds, despite starting from less than zero, I'd actually made it. And in 3 weeks, I was going back to face the life I'd left behind. The Morrison Associates building in my hometown was sleek, modern, all glass and steel rising from what used to be the old warehouse district. The neighborhood had changed, gentrified, become the place where companies like ours wanted to be seen. I arrived early on my first day, dressed in a suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe used to, carrying a briefcase that signaled success in every stitch. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup was flawless, and my heels clicked with authority on the marble floor. I looked like a woman who had her life together. And for the first time, I actually felt like one. "Miss Chun," my assistant greeted me. Young, eager, reminding me of who I'd been 3 years ago. "The team is assembled in the main conference room for your introductory meeting." "Thank you, Jordan. Give me 5 minutes to settle in, then we'll begin." My office was a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It had a desk that could land aircraft and a seating area for client meetings. It was the physical manifestation of everything I'd fought for. I took a moment, just one, to breathe it in. Then I grabbed my tablet and headed to the conference room. The team was chatting when I walked in, 15 people representing different departments, all of whom would be reporting to me. I recognized several names from industry publications, poached talent from competing firms. This was my team now. My responsibility. My chance to build something extraordinary. "Good morning," I said, my voice carrying the calm authority I'd practiced. "I'm Mara Chun, and I'm thrilled to be leading this branch. I know some of you have concerns about having a new director, especially one who's relatively young. Those concerns are valid. But I'm not here to prove myself to you through speeches. I'm here to prove myself through results." I clicked to the first slide of my presentation, a comprehensive 90-day plan. "In the next 3 months, we're going to establish Morrison and Associates as the premier marketing firm in this city. We're going to win accounts from competitors. We're going to exceed every metric corporate has set for us, and we're going to do it by being better, faster, and more innovative than anyone else." I walked them through the strategy, fielded questions, established expectations. They were smart, engaged, exactly the kind of team I needed. "Any final questions before we break?" I asked. A hand went up in the back. "Just one. When do we meet the creative team that's transferring from the downtown office?" I checked my notes. They should be arriving. I glanced at my watch. Right about now, actually. Jordan scheduled them for a separate orientation at 10. Perfect. Because I heard Kyle Morrison is on that team, and I'm dying to see if he's as good as his reputation. The world tilted sideways. Kyle Morrison. It couldn't be. Morrison was a common last name. It was coincidence, parallel lives, a cosmic joke that wasn't actually funny. "Excuse me," I said, my voice remarkably steady. Kyle Morrison? Can you tell me about his background? The team member, a senior account manager named Lisa, looked eager to share gossip. Oh, he's supposed to be this brilliant creative director. Self-taught, apparently. Made a name for himself at some boutique agency downtown. Sandra Morrison personally recruited him. No relation, ironically, but everyone says he's going to be a major asset. My hands were very still on my tablet. I see. And he's joining our creative department. Yeah, he'll be reporting directly to you, actually. Sandra thought his innovative approach would complement your strategic mind. Of course. Of course, Kyle had somehow landed on his feet. Of course, he'd managed to fail upward into a position at my firm. Of course, the universe had decided that my triumphant return would include managing my ex-boyfriend. Wonderful, I said, and I almost believed my own calm tone. I look forward to meeting the entire creative team. Now, if there are no other questions, let's get to work. The meeting dispersed, but I stayed in the conference room, gripping the edge of the table. Jordan poked their head back in. Ms. Chun? The creative team is waiting in the small conference room. Would you like me to bring them here instead? No, I said quickly. I'll go to them. Give me 2 minutes. Jordan nodded and disappeared. I walked to the window, looking out over the city I'd fled from 3 years ago. Somewhere out there was the apartment building where Kyle had destroyed me. Somewhere out there was the motel where I'd rebuilt myself. And now, somewhere in this very building, was the man himself. I checked my reflection in the glass. The woman looking back at me was unrecognizable from the person who'd cried herself to sleep in that motel. She was powerful, successful, in control. She was also about to walk into a room and face the man who'd told her she'd never amount to anything. I smiled at my reflection, turned on my heel, and headed toward the small conference room like I was walking into battle. Because that's exactly what this was. The small conference room had glass walls, which meant I could see them before they saw me. 5 people, chatting and laughing, completely unaware that their world was about to tilt on its axis. And there, holding court in the middle of the group, was Kyle. He'd changed, but not much. Still had that carefully maintained stubble, still dressed in the creative uniform of expensive jeans and a blazer, still had that easy confidence of someone who'd never actually had to struggle for anything. He was talking, gesturing animatedly, making the group laugh, playing the role of charming creative genius. I took a breath, smoothed down my jacket, and opened the door. Good morning, I said, and I had the satisfaction of watching Kyle's face go through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, disbelief, and finally, something that looked like fear. I'm Mara Chen, director of this branch. You must be the creative team. The others introduced themselves, shaking my hand, eager and professional. Kyle stood frozen at the back of the group, his face pale. And you must be Kyle Morrison, I said, extending my hand to him with perfect professional courtesy. Sandra speaks very highly of your work. He took my hand automatically, his grip weak.
Mara, I
didn't know you worked here. Worked here? I smiled, sharp and bright. I don't just work here, Kyle. I run this entire operation. Which means, as of today, you work for me. The silence in the room was deafening. The other team members were looking between us, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Why don't we all have a seat? I said, settling into the head of the table like I owned it. Because I did. I want to hear about the projects you've been working on and how we can integrate them into our strategic goals here. The meeting proceeded with painful professionalism. The other creatives were talented and eager, presenting campaigns and ideas with genuine enthusiasm. I engaged with them, asked questions, offered feedback. Kyle barely spoke. He kept staring at me like I was a ghost, like I was something impossible that had materialized out of his past to haunt him. Good. Kyle, I said, turning to him directly. You've been quiet. What projects are you most excited to work on here? He cleared his throat, and I remembered that sound, remembered how he used to clear his throat before lying to me. I'm excited about all of it. The opportunities here are Substantial? I supplied helpfully. Yes, they are. This branch has enormous potential, and I expect everyone on this team to exceed expectations.
Noko ustino, no mu diakriti.
We're building something exceptional here, and if you can't commit to that level of excellence, now is the time to speak up. My eyes locked with his. The message was clear. I will not make this easy for you. I'm committed, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Wonderful. Then I'm sure we'll work very well together. I stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Jordan will get you all set up with your workspace assignments and computer access. We have a team lunch scheduled for Friday, so everyone can get to know each other. I'm looking forward to seeing what this group can accomplish. The creatives filed out, but Kyle lingered. I knew he would. Mara, can we talk? Privately? I looked at him, at this man who'd once held my heart in his hands and crushed it without a second thought. About what, exactly? About us. About what happened. What happened? I tilted my head, genuinely curious about what story he'd told himself. You mean when you cheated on me, told me I'd never amount to anything, and said I'd come crawling back? He flinched. I was an idiot. Yes, you were. But that's ancient history, Kyle. I'm not interested in relitigating the past. You're here to do a job, and as long as you do it well, we'll have no problems. But nothing.
My voice was steel now.
You're my employee. I'm your boss. That's the extent of our relationship. Are we clear? He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have convinced him otherwise. Crystal clear. Excellent. Welcome to Morrison Associates. I have high expectations for your work here. Don't disappoint me. I walked out, leaving him standing in the conference room, and I didn't look back. Words spread through the office like wildfire. The new director and one of the new creatives had history. Nobody knew the details, but everyone knew there was a story there. And in the competitive world of corporate marketing, stories were currency. I ignored the whispers. I had a branch to run, accounts to secure, success to build. The first week was a whirlwind of client meetings, strategy sessions, and team building. I worked 15-hour days, establishing my leadership style, making it clear that competence and results were the only currencies that mattered. Kyle, to his credit, kept his head down and did his work. But I could feel his eyes on me in meetings, could sense his confusion at the woman I'd become. On Friday, the team lunch was held at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the salads cost $30 and the wine list was thicker than most novels. I sat at the head of the table, directing conversation, making sure everyone felt included. Kyle was seated halfway down, between two junior designers who were clearly starstruck by his supposed reputation. He'd apparently spent the week charming the younger staff, playing the role of the cool creative director who is too innovative for corporate rules. Some things never changed. So, Mara, Lisa said, her second glass of wine making her bold. What made you want to come back to this city? I heard you were killing it at the main office. I was, I said simply. But this is a unique opportunity to build something from the ground up. And I have personal reasons for wanting to prove that this city hasn't seen the best of me yet. My eyes flicked to Kyle for just a second, and I saw him flinch. That's so inspiring. One of the junior designers gushed. You're like total girl boss goals. I laughed. I prefer competent professional, but I'll take the compliment. The lunch continued, flowing with easy conversation and expensive wine. As the plates were cleared and coffee was served, Lisa leaned in conspiratorially. Okay, I have to ask. You and Kyle clearly have history. Are you going to tell us the story, or do we have to speculate? The table went quiet. Everyone was trying to look like they weren't dying to know. I considered my options. I could shut it down, maintain professional distance, keep my past private. Or I could control the narrative, make it clear exactly where things stood. I chose option 2. Kyle and I dated years ago, I said, my voice carrying clearly down the table. It ended badly. He cheated on me, told me I'd never amount to anything, and made it clear that I was holding him back from his potential. Kyle's face went from pale to red. Mara, I held up a hand. I'm not finished. That breakup was the best thing that ever happened to me. It motivated me to go to graduate school, to build a real career, to become the kind of person who doesn't need anyone to validate her worth. So in a way, Kyle, I should thank you. Your betrayal was the catalyst for my success. I raised my water glass in a mock toast to bad relationships that make us stronger. The table was frozen, everyone looking between Kyle and me like we were gladiators in an arena. That's not fair, Kyle finally said, his voice tight. You're making me sound like a villain.
I am stating facts, I corrected gently.
If the facts make you uncomfortable, perhaps that's something to reflect on. But this is the last time we're going to discuss this. We work together now, and I expect everyone at this table to maintain a professional environment. That includes not gossiping about your boss's personal life. The message was clear and the team got it. Conversation shifted to safer topics, but the power dynamic had been established beyond any doubt. I was in charge, and Kyle was going to have to live with that. The next few weeks established a rhythm. Morrison Associates' new branch was exceeding expectations, winning pitches that should have gone to more established firms, delivering campaigns that got noticed. My team was good, and I made sure they knew I appreciated them. I gave credit where it was due, mentored the junior staff, and fought for resources from corporate. But Kyle was a problem. Not because his work was bad. Actually, his creative instincts were better than I wanted to admit. But he couldn't handle taking direction from me, couldn't handle being just another employee instead of the star of the show. It came to a head 3 weeks into my tenure. We were pitching a major account, a tech company that was preparing to launch a revolutionary new product. The pitch was worth $3 million, and winning it would establish our branch as a serious player. I developed the overall strategy, a comprehensive campaign that would position the product as not just innovative but necessary. But I'd asked Kyle to create the visual concepts, to bring the strategy to life. He'd ignored half my notes and gone in a completely different direction. This isn't what I asked for, I said, reviewing his presentation the day before the pitch. We were alone in the conference room, his work displayed on the screen. I know, he said, and there was defiance in his voice. But my vision is better. Trust me, Mara. This is what will win. Your vision completely undermines the strategic narrative. The client specifically said they wanted to emphasize accessibility, and you've made it look exclusive and intimidating. That's because you're thinking too literally. You're so focused on following rules that you can't see innovation when it's right in front of you. The insult hung in the air between us. Kyle, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I'm going to pretend you didn't just insult my professional judgment in front of my own presentation. You're going to go back to your desk, incorporate my feedback, and have a revised version ready by 8 a.m. tomorrow. And if I don't, I closed my laptop and looked at him directly. Then you'll be looking for a new job. I don't care how talented Sandra thinks you are. In this branch, we work as a team, we respect the strategic direction, and we check our egos at the door. Am I making myself clear? You're enjoying this, aren't you? His voice was bitter. Having power over me, making me feel small. Kyle, I'm not making you feel anything. You're doing that all by yourself. I stood up, gathering my materials. You have until 8 a.m., don't disappoint me. I walked out and I didn't look back. The next morning, at 7:45 a.m., a revised presentation appeared in my email. Kyle had incorporated every piece of feedback, and the result was brilliant. His creative vision combined with my strategic framework created something that was truly special.
I didn't tell him that.
I just sent back a single word. Better. The pitch was at 2 p.m. Our entire team crammed into the conference room, ready to show the client what we could do. Kyle and I would co-present, strategy and creative working in perfect sync. Or, at least, that was the plan. The clients arrived, 3 executives, all men in their 40s, carrying the confident air of people who held millions of dollars in their hands. Ms. Chun, the CEO said, shaking my hand with the kind of grip that wanted to prove something. We've heard impressive things about your reputation. Looking forward to seeing if you live up to the hype. I appreciate the opportunity, I said smoothly. Let me introduce my team. I went around the room, making introductions, establishing credibility. When I got to Kyle, the CEO's handshake was noticeably warmer. Kyle Morrison.
I've heard about you.
That beverage campaign last year was genius. Kyle smiled, basking in the recognition. Thank you. I'm excited to show you what we've developed. Notice the word choice. We've developed, not I've developed. The presentation began. I laid out the strategic foundation, walking them through market research, consumer insights, and the narrative framework that would make their product irresistible. Then I handed it to Kyle for the creative execution, and watched him try to take credit for the entire thing. So, what I've developed here, he said, clicking through the slides that were equally my work, is a comprehensive campaign that positions your product as both innovative and accessible. I let him talk. Let him use I instead of we. Let him carefully erase my contribution from the story he was telling. The clients were impressed. They asked questions and Kyle answered them, weaving in pieces of my strategy without ever acknowledging where they came from. When he finished, they turned to me. Ms. Chun, as director, what's your take on this campaign? I smiled, pulled up a document on my laptop, and projected it onto the screen. This is the strategic brief I developed 3 weeks ago, I said calmly. You'll notice that every element Kyle just presented was outlined here, including the specific messaging framework, the target audience segmentation, and the emotional journey we wanted to create. The room temperature dropped about 20 degrees. Kyle's execution is excellent, I continued, my voice professional and even. His visual concepts brought my strategy to life in exactly the way I'd hoped. That's what makes great marketing, strategy and creativity working in perfect partnership. The clients looked at Kyle, who'd gone pale. So, this was a collaborative effort? The CEO asked. Very much so, I confirmed. That's how we operate here. I develop the strategic foundation. My creative team brings it to life, and we deliver campaigns that achieve measurable results. No one person is bigger than the team. The message was clear to everyone in the room. Kyle had tried to take credit, and I just gently but firmly put him back in his place. The clients appreciated it. They'd been in business long enough to recognize ego when they saw it, and they valued the kind of leader who gave credit where it was due. We won the pitch, $3 million, and the potential for a long-term partnership if the campaign succeeded. After the clients left, I gathered my team in the conference room. Excellent work, everyone. This is exactly the kind of collaboration that wins major accounts. I looked directly at Kyle. And remember, we succeed as a team. Individual recognition is great, but it means nothing if we don't deliver for the client together. Later that evening, Kyle appeared at my office door. I was reviewing contracts, the city lights glittering beyond my window. Come to gloat, he asked. I looked up, genuinely surprised.
About what?
About humiliating me in front of the client. Kyle, I didn't humiliate you. I corrected a misrepresentation. There's a difference. You made me look like an idiot. No, I said, setting down my pen. You tried to take credit for collaborative work, and I clarified the actual contributions. That's called leadership. He slumped into the chair across from my desk without being invited. Why do you hate me so much? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. I don't hate you, Kyle. Hating you would require me to care about you, and I don't. You're an employee. A talented one, admittedly, but still just an employee. That's not true. You've been punishing me since the moment I walked in here. I've been managing you, I corrected. And if you can't tell the difference between management and punishment, that explains a lot about why you've struggled to advance in your career. His face flushed. I haven't struggled. I'm a creative director. You're 33 years old, Kyle. At your age, with your supposed talent, you should be at least a VP by now. But you're not because you can't work as part of a team. You can't handle not being the star of the show. You take credit for others' work and wonder why you don't get promoted. The words were harsh, but they were also true. I saw the realization dawn on his face. The beverage campaign everyone praised you for? I continued. I looked it up. You were one of 5 people on that team, but you're the only one who talks about it like you did it alone. The other 4 are all VPs now. You're still a director, Don't you wonder why? He was silent. I'm not your enemy, Kyle. But I'm not going to enable your ego either. You have real talent. If you could just learn to share credit, to value collaboration over personal glory, you could actually fulfill the potential everyone seems to think you have. Like you, he said bitterly. Yes, like me. I built my success on recognizing that no one achieves anything alone. Every mentor who invested in me, every team member who had my back, every client who took a chance on me, they all contributed to where I am now. And I make sure they know I appreciate it. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. You have a choice, Kyle. You can keep resenting me for having power you think you deserve. Or you can learn from this, grow, and become the kind of professional who actually earns advancement. But that's up to you. I can't want it for you. He left without another word, and I turned back to my contracts. But I'd seen something in his face in those final moments. Maybe not quite understanding, but the beginning of it. The first crack in the defensive wall he'd built around his fragile ego. Time would tell if it would be enough. The tech company campaign launched 6 weeks later, and it was a phenomenon. The product sold out within hours. Our client's stock price jumped 15%. Trade publications wrote articles analyzing our strategy. Morrison Associates Corporate was thrilled. Sandra called me personally to congratulate the team. Mara, this is exactly what I hoped would happen when I sent you there. You're not just running a branch. You're setting the standard for the entire company. Thank you, Sandra. But it really was a team effort. Kyle Morrison's creative execution was crucial to the success. I heard there was some tension there during the pitch. So the clients had talked. Of course they had. There's a learning curve about collaboration, I said diplomatically. But Kyle's talented, and I think he's starting to understand how to channel that talent within a team structure. That's exactly why I wanted you in leadership, Mara. You don't just deliver results. You develop people. Keep doing what you're doing. After I hung up, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. 3 years ago, I'd been sleeping in a motel, wondering if I'd ever amount to anything. Now I was being praised by the founder of one of the country's most prestigious firms. Kyle hadn't been wrong about everything. I was enjoying this, but not for the reasons he thought. I wasn't enjoying having power over him. I was enjoying being exactly who I'd promised myself I'd become. The success of the tech campaign brought in more business. We were no longer the new branch trying to prove itself. We were the branch everyone wanted to work with. My team grew, new clients signed on, and the pressure ramped up accordingly. Kyle and I settled into a functional working relationship. He still bristled at taking direction, but he'd learned to channel his frustration into his work instead of into confrontation. His campaigns were innovative, eye-catching, exactly what clients wanted. And I made sure he got credit for it. In client meetings, in internal reports, in conversations with corporate, I highlighted his contributions, gave him visibility, treated him like the professional he could be when his ego wasn't in the way. I think it confused him more than anything else. One evening, about 4 months into my tenure, I was working late when Kyle knocked on my office door. Got a minute? He asked. Sure. What's up? He sat down, and for the first time since we'd reconnected, he looked genuinely uncertain. I wanted to thank you. For what? For the email you sent to Sandra about my work on the tech campaign. She's asked me to present at the Corporate Strategy Summit next month. I remembered the email. Sandra had asked for my assessment of my team, and I'd been honest about Kyle's strengths. He was brilliant creatively, had instincts that couldn't be taught, and when he wasn't trying to dominate the spotlight, he elevated everyone around him. You earned it, I said simply. Your work has been strong. Even though I was an asshole during the pitch? Even though. Kyle, I'm not trying to punish you for who you were 3 years ago. I'm trying to help you become who you could be. Those are very different things. He looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time since I'd become his boss. You really have changed. So could you if you wanted to. Is that what this has all been about? Some kind of redemption arc you're writing for me? I laughed. My God, you're still so self-centered.
No, Kyle.
This isn't about you. It's about me running an effective team. You're good at your job, and when you're not actively trying to undermine my authority, you make this branch better. That's it. That's the extent of my interest in your personal growth. But you went out of your way to recommend me, because it was true, and because I believe in recognizing talent when I see it, even when it comes packaged with an ego problem. He smiled, just a little. I really did a number on you, didn't I? You think too highly of yourself. You were a chapter in my life, Kyle. A painful one, sure, but just one chapter. You didn't define me. You were just the catalyst for me defining myself. I think about it sometimes, he said quietly. About how things ended. About what I said to you. Don't. My voice was firm. I've moved on and you should too. We have a functional working relationship, and that's all this needs to be. Right. He stood up. Thanks for the opportunity at the summit.
Thanks, Sandra.
She's the one who saw your potential. After he left, I sat in the gathering darkness of my office, looking out at the city that had once seen me at my lowest. The truth was more complicated than I'd made it sound. Kyle had been more than just a catalyst. He'd been my first real love, the first person I'd trusted completely, the first one who'd shown me that trust could be weaponized. But I hadn't lied when I said I'd moved on. The girl who'd cried in that motel room was gone, replaced by someone stronger, smarter, and far less willing to make herself small for anyone. Kyle was right about one thing, though. I had changed. The question was, had he? The Corporate Strategy Summit was held in a luxury hotel downtown, bringing together directors and senior leadership from all of Morrison and Associates offices. It was part conference, part networking opportunity, part elaborate performance, where everyone tried to prove they deserved their position. I'd been to 2 of these before, back when I was a rising star at the main office. Now I was attending as a director, sitting with the leadership team, making decisions about the company's future direction. Kyle was presenting on the second day, showcasing the creative strategies that had made our branch successful. I'd helped him prepare, making sure he credited the entire team, ensuring his presentation fit within the broader strategic narrative. The night before his presentation, there was a cocktail reception. I wore a black dress that probably cost more than my first car, my hair styled in a way that said, powerful, without trying too hard. I worked the room, chatting with other directors, flattering corporate executives, building the relationships that would secure my branch's future. It was David Park, director of the LA office and my biggest internal competitor. I heard your branch is crushing it. $3 million accounts in your first 6 months? We should all be terrified. Just lucky with the clients, I said with false modesty. Luck had nothing to do with it. You stole Nexus tech right out from under me. That was pure strategy. He said it with a smile, but there was an edge underneath. May the best pitch win, I said, raising my champagne glass. Is it true you're managing your ex-boyfriend? David leaned in, his voice dropping to gossip level. That must be awkward. So the story had spread that far. We have a professional relationship. His work is excellent, and that's all that matters. Very diplomatic. But come on, between you and me, what's it like having that kind of power over someone who wronged you? I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't find it satisfying. I looked at David, at his eager expression, at the way he was trying to turn my personal history into entertainment. And I realized this was what Carl probably thought I'd been doing all along, using my position to punish him, to make him suffer, to extract some kind of revenge. Honestly, David, it's not satisfying at all. It's just work. Kyle is a talented creative director who's learning to be a better team player. That's the extent of the drama. Really? Because I heard. Whatever you heard is probably exaggerated. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check in with my team. I found Kyle near the bar, nursing a whiskey and looking uncomfortable in his suit. For all his creative confidence, he never quite fit in at these corporate events. Nervous about tomorrow? I asked, signaling the bartender for a sparkling water. Terrified, he admitted. Public speaking isn't really my thing. You'll be fine. Your presentation is strong, and you know the material inside and out. Easy for you to say. You're a natural at this. He gestured around the room, at the schmoozing and networking and performance of success. I wasn't always, I said. 3 years ago, I would have been hiding in the bathroom, too anxious to make small talk with people who seemed so much more accomplished than me. What changed? I stopped comparing myself to everyone else and started focusing on being excellent at what I do. Turns out, competence is its own kind of confidence. He looked at me, and there was something different in his expression. Not resentment or bitterness, but something that might have been respect.
Can I ask you something? He said.
And will you give me an honest answer? Depends on the question. Do you ever miss it? What we had. I considered the question seriously because he deserved that much. I miss who I thought you were. I miss the version of our relationship that existed in my head, where we were partners building a life together. But that person and that relationship never actually existed. So no, I don't miss the reality of what we had. That's fair, he said quietly. Do you miss it? I asked, surprising myself with the question. I miss having someone who believed in me the way you did, who supported me without expecting anything in return. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but I do now. He took a sip of his whiskey.
I'm sorry, Mara.
I know it's 3 years too late, and I know an apology doesn't fix anything. But I am genuinely sorry for how I treated you. It was the first time he'd actually apologized, without defensiveness or excuses. Just a simple acknowledgement of harm done. I appreciate that, I said. And I meant it. Not because the apology changed anything, but because it meant he was finally taking responsibility. For what it's worth, he continued, you were right. About all of it. I was using you, I was selfish, and I squandered something good because I couldn't see past my own ego. Kyle, let me finish. Working for you these past few months has been humbling. Watching you lead, seeing how you treat people, how you build teams, it's made me realize how much I've been holding myself back. I blamed my lack of success on other people, on bad timing, on not getting the right opportunities. But the truth is, I've been my own worst enemy. Self-awareness is the first step, I said gently. I know I can't undo the past. And I know we're never going to be friends, or anything more than colleagues. But I want you to know that I'm grateful for this chance. You could have made my life hell, and instead you've made me better at my job. That's more grace than I deserved. I looked at him, at this man who'd once broken my heart, who'd told me I'd amount to nothing, who'd made me feel worthless. And I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped carrying that pain around. Not because he'd apologized, but because I'd built a life where his opinion of me no longer mattered. We all deserve the chance to grow, I said. Even the people who hurt us. Sandra Morrison appeared at my elbow, elegant in a silver gown that probably cost more than some people's cars. Mara, Kyle, I'm glad I found you both. I wanted to give you a heads up. We're announcing something tomorrow that will affect your branch. My stomach tightened. Good news or bad news? Good news, I hope. We're doubling your budget and expanding your territory. Effective next quarter, you'll be responsible for 3 additional states. It's going to mean significant growth, more staff, bigger clients. I felt a surge of excitement and terror in equal measure. That's incredible, Sandra. Thank you for the confidence. You've earned it. But it's going to mean long hours and significant pressure. I need to know you're up for it. Absolutely, I said without hesitation. Sandra looked at Kyle. And I'll need to know your creative team can scale to meet the demand. Your presentation tomorrow is going to be crucial in proving we can handle the expansion. We're ready, Kyle said, and there was confidence in his voice that sounded earned rather than empty. After Sandra left, Kyle and I stood in companionable silence, watching the corporate elite network and politic around us. You must be thrilled, Kyle said. I'm terrified, I admitted. This is everything I've wanted, but it's also a massive responsibility. If I fail, you won't fail. You don't know how to. The compliment caught me off guard. Thanks. I mean it. You're the most driven person I've ever met. You'll figure it out and you'll exceed expectations, because that's what you do. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not my ex-boyfriend but a colleague who understood the pressure of this moment. Your presentation tomorrow is going to be crucial, I said. Not just for you, but for our entire branch. This expansion depends on proving we can deliver at scale. No pressure then, he said with a wry smile. You can do this, Kyle. You're talented enough. You just need to get out of your own way. Story of my life, he murmured. We stood there for a moment longer, two people who'd once meant everything to each other, now united by professional ambition instead of romance. It felt right in a way that our actual relationship never had. Kyle's presentation the next day was brilliant. He showcased our campaigns with genuine enthusiasm, credited the team repeatedly, and fielded questions with confidence and grace. I watched from the audience, feeling oddly proud, like a coach watching a player finally achieve their potential. After the formal sessions ended, Sandra pulled me into a private meeting with the executive team. Mara, we're impressed with what you've built in 6 months. The expansion is just the beginning. We're looking at you for VP track, possibly as early as next year if you continue exceeding targets. VP track. At 31. It was everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed for. I won't let you down, I said. I know you won't, but I need you to be realistic about what this means. The expansion will require even more of your time and energy. Personal life will have to take a back seat.
Can you handle that?
I thought about my apartment, beautiful and empty. My schedule, packed with work and more work. My personal life, which consisted of occasional dinners with colleagues and phone calls with my mother. I can handle it, I said. And I meant it. This was what I wanted. This was what I'd built. Wasn't it? The flight back home felt different. I'd arrived at the summit as a successful director. I was leaving as a future VP, with an expanding empire under my control. Kyle was on the same flight, sitting across the aisle. We didn't talk much, both of us exhausted from days of networking and performance. As we were landing, he leaned over. Hey, Mara. Thanks for believing in me, even when I didn't deserve it. Just keep doing good work, I said. That's all the thanks I need. But as the plane touched down, as we returned to the city where our story had started and restarted, I felt something shift inside me. I'd spent 3 years becoming the kind of person who didn't need Kyle, who didn't need anyone. I'd built success on independence, on proving I could thrive alone. But somewhere in the process of managing him, of watching him grow, of seeing him finally take responsibility for his mistakes, something had changed. I didn't love him. That part of my heart had been permanently closed by his betrayal. But I didn't hate him anymore either. And maybe, just maybe, that was its own kind of victory. The expansion happened fast. Within a month, we'd opened satellite offices in 3 new states, hired 40 new employees, and taken on clients that would have been unthinkable a year ago. I was working 18-hour days, living in the office, surviving on coffee and adrenaline. My team was stretched thin, everyone pushing to prove we could handle the growth. Kyle had become my right hand, without either of us quite deciding it would happen. He understood my vision, could translate strategy into creative execution, and had finally learned how to lead a team instead of just be a star. Late one night, 3 months into the expansion, we were both still in the office. I was reviewing contracts. He was finalizing a presentation for a major pitch the next day. You should go home, I said, noticing it was past midnight. You should take your own advice, he countered. I will. After I finish these contracts.
Right.
That's what you said 2 hours ago. I looked up, ready to snap at him, and saw genuine concern in his face. When's the last time you had a full night's sleep? He asked. I don't know. Tuesday? Maybe Monday? Mara, you're going to burn out.
Fine.
You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground trying to prove you can handle this expansion. I can handle it. I know you can. But you don't have to do it alone. He stood up, walked to my office, leaned against the doorframe. You've built an incredible team. Let them help you. I am letting them help. No, you're delegating tasks but not responsibility. You're still carrying everything on your shoulders because you think if you don't, you'll fail. But Mara, you've already succeeded. You've already proven everything you needed to prove. The words hit harder than they should have. Because he was right. I'd spent 3 years running from the woman I'd been, the woman who'd been weak enough to be broken by a man. I'd built success on never being vulnerable again, on never needing anyone, on being so competent that failure wasn't possible. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten how to be human. I don't know how to do it differently, I admitted quietly. Start by going home. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow ready to delegate instead of micromanage. Are you seriously giving me advice on work-life balance? You, who I've caught sleeping at your desk twice this month. He smiled. Takes one to know one. Come on, I'll walk you out. We left the office together, the building quiet and dark except for the emergency lights. Outside, the city was still alive, people heading home from bars, night shifts beginning, life continuing while we'd been locked in our fluorescent bubble. Can I ask you something? Kyle said as we walked to the parking garage. Sure. Are you happy? The question stopped me in my tracks.
What?
Are you happy? With all of this? With the expansion and the VP track and the 18-hour days? I wanted to say yes immediately, to defend the life I'd built. But the question deserved honesty. I'm successful, I said carefully.
I'm accomplished. I'm respected.
That's not what I asked. It's the same thing. Is it? We reached my car, a sleek luxury sedan that I'd bought 6 months ago as a symbol of my success. It still smelled new, mostly because I barely spent any time in it. I'm happy enough, I finally said. This is what I wanted. This is what I worked for. But is it what you need? Kyle, what are you trying to say? He shoved his hands in his pockets, looking uncertain in a way I hadn't seen since his presentation at the summit. I'm saying that I spent 3 years chasing what I wanted, recognition, success, being seen as brilliant. And in the process, I lost the one thing I actually needed, which was someone who saw me as more than my accomplishments. Kyle, I'm not trying to rehash the past. I'm just saying that I recognize the pattern. I see you making the same mistakes I did, and I don't want that for you. I'm nothing like you were, I said, more sharply than I intended. No, you're much better at it. You're more successful, more driven, more competent. But you're just as alone as I was. Maybe more. The words stung, because they were true. My apartment was beautiful and empty. My schedule was full of meetings and clients and 0 personal connections. The last time I'd called a friend just to talk, not to network, had been... I couldn't remember. I chose this, I said. I know. But choosing it doesn't mean it's right. What do you want from me, Kyle? An admission that you broke me so badly that I can't have a normal life anymore? That I've turned into some kind of workaholic robot because trusting people is too scary? No, he said gently. I want you to consider that maybe you've overshot the correction. You were too dependent before, so now you've made yourself completely independent. But neither extreme is actually healthy. Since when are you a therapist? Since I spent the last 6 months in actual therapy, trying to figure out why I keep sabotaging my own success. Turns out, I've been running from my own feelings of inadequacy by trying to prove I'm better than everyone else. Sound familiar?
It did.
It sounded exactly like what I'd been doing. Go home, Kyle, I said, unlocking my car. Get some sleep. We have a big pitch tomorrow. He didn't push, just nodded and headed to his own car. But his words followed me home, echoing in the empty space of my apartment. Was I happy? I'd spent 3 years defining happiness as success, as proving Kyle and everyone else wrong, as never being vulnerable again. But sitting alone in my beautiful apartment, eating takeout that had gone cold because I'd been on a conference call, I had to wonder if Kyle was right. Maybe I had overshot the correction. Maybe I'd become so focused on proving I didn't need anyone that I'd forgotten how to let anyone in. Maybe success wasn't enough. The pitch the next day was for Next-Gen Pharmaceuticals, a massive account that would cement our branch's reputation and guarantee my promotion to VP. It was everything I'd been working toward, the culmination of 3 years of relentless effort. And I bombed it. Not because the strategy was weak, but because I was exhausted, running on 2 hours of sleep and too much coffee. I stumbled over key points, forgot client names, lost my train of thought mid-sentence. Kyle covered for me brilliantly, smoothly redirecting when I faltered, filling in gaps, keeping the presentation on track. but we both knew it wasn't enough. The clients left promising to think about it, which in pitch speak meant, we're going with someone else. Back at the office, I sat in my conference room, staring at nothing. I'd failed. For the first time in 3 years, I genuinely failed. Kyle knocked softly on the door.
Hey.
You okay? I just blew a $20 million pitch. The pitch was fine. You just weren't at your best. That's the same thing as failure in this business. He sat down across from me. Want to know what I think? Not really, but you're going to tell me anyway. I think you're exhausted. I think you've been running on fumes for months, and today it finally caught up with you. It happens. It doesn't happen to me. I don't fail. Everyone fails sometimes, Mara. That's called being human. I can't afford to be human right now. I have an expansion to manage, a team depending on me, a VP promotion on the line. And when was the last time you did something that wasn't work? I looked at him, at this man who'd once been my biggest failure and was now sitting across from me, concern genuine in his eyes. I don't know, I admitted. Then maybe that's the problem. He stood up. Come on. Come on, where? We're leaving. You're taking the rest of the day off. Kyle, I can't. Yes, you can. You're the director. You can do whatever you want. And right now, what you need to do is take a break before you actually burn out. We could lose the next-gen account. We probably will. But working yourself into the ground won't change that. Sometimes you do your best and still lose. That's business. He was right, and I hated it. But I also didn't have the energy to argue.
Fine.
One afternoon. But if anything urgent comes up, I'll handle it. That's what you pay me for. Kyle drove us to the park where we used to go, back when we were dating. It was a sprawling green space with a lake, walking trails, and enough room to feel like you weren't in the middle of a city. Why here? I asked as we got out of the car. Because it's familiar. Because it's peaceful. Because it's the opposite of our office. We walked in silence for a while, following a trail that wound around the lake. It was a Tuesday afternoon, so the park was quiet, just a few joggers and people walking dogs. I used to come here after work sometimes, Kyle said. After you left. I'd sit by the lake and think about all the ways I'd screwed up. That sounds depressing. It was. But it was also the first time I really allowed myself to feel bad about what I'd done. Before that, I'd just gotten defensive, told myself you were overreacting, that you'd chosen to sacrifice your dreams, so it wasn't my fault. You were a piece of work. Still am, just slightly less of one. He stopped at a bench overlooking the lake. Can we sit for a minute? We sat, watching ducks paddle across the water, the city skyline visible in the distance. I know I apologized before, Kyle said. But I don't think I really explained what I was apologizing for. Kyle, you don't have to, please. Let me say this. I nodded. I didn't just cheat on you. I mean, that was bad enough. But the real damage was how I made you feel about yourself. I took someone who is confident and capable and full of dreams, and I turned you into someone small and scared and uncertain. I made you think that loving someone meant disappearing into them. I let you do that, I said quietly.
No.
I actively encouraged it. Every time you expressed a need or a dream, I made you feel selfish for having it. Every time you asked for more from me, I made you feel demanding. I systematically broke down your sense of self-worth so that you'd be easier to manage. Why are you telling me this? Because I watch you now, and I see someone who's overcorrected so hard in the opposite direction that you've made yourself unavailable. You won't let anyone close because you're terrified of being made small again. And I hate that I did that to you. I looked at him, at the genuine regret in his face. I'm not that person anymore. I'm not weak. You were never weak, Mara. You were in love with the wrong person. There's a difference. It felt like weakness. I know. And that's on me. He turned to face me fully. I want you to know something. Watching you lead these past 6 months, seeing you build something incredible, being managed by someone who actually knows what they're doing, it's been humbling. You're everything I pretended to be, but wasn't. Stop. I'm serious. You're brilliant, you're fair, you develop talent instead of taking credit for it. You've built a team that would follow you anywhere. And you did it all while carrying the burden of what I did to you. That takes real strength. Kyle, I'm not trying to win you back or anything like that. I know that ship has sailed. I just needed you to know that you were right about everything. I was using you, I was selfish, and I missed out on something real because I was too immature to appreciate it. We sat in silence for a long moment, the afternoon sun warm on our faces. Thank you for saying that, I finally said. It doesn't change the past, but it helps to know you understand what you did. For what it's worth, I think you've built an amazing life. I'm just worried that you're so focused on proving you don't need anyone that you've forgotten how to let anyone in. Maybe I have, but that's safer. Safer isn't always better. A duck waddled up to our bench, looking for food we didn't have. It quacked indignantly and waddled away. Can I give you some unsolicited advice? Kyle asked. Have I been able to stop you before? He smiled. Take the VP promotion when they offer it. You've earned it. But also take a vacation. Hire that assistant you've been putting off getting. Delegate more. And maybe, just maybe, consider dating someone who isn't a complete disaster. I'm not dating anyone. Exactly my point. I don't have time for dating. You don't make time for dating. There's a difference. Kyle, I know. Unsolicited advice from your ex-boyfriend who royally screwed up. But humor me. You've spent 3 years becoming the person you needed to be. Maybe it's time to figure out who you want to be. We stayed at the park until sunset, talking about work, about life, about the strange journey that had brought us from lovers to strangers to colleagues to something that might almost be friendship. As we drove back to the office to pick up my car, Kyle said, "Thanks for giving me this chance. I know it would have been easier to have me transferred or fired. You're too talented to waste. And everyone deserves the opportunity to grow. Even people who break your heart. Especially them. Because they have the most to learn." The next-gen account went to a competitor, as expected. But losing it didn't devastate me the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt like a release, like permission to be imperfect. I took Kyle's advice. I hired an assistant, a sharp young woman named Maya, who reminded me of myself at that age. I started delegating more, trusting my team to handle things I would have micromanaged before. And I took a vacation. Just a long weekend, but it was the first time in 3 years I'd gone more than a day without checking my email. The VP promotion came through 6 weeks later. Sandra called me personally, telling me I'd be the youngest VP in the company's history. "This is just the beginning, Mara," she said. "You're going places." I thanked her, accepted the promotion, and then did something that surprised even me. I asked for a more reasonable work schedule. "I want to keep delivering excellent results," I explained. "But I need to build a sustainable pace. I can't be effective if I'm constantly exhausted." Sandra laughed. "I was wondering when you'd figure that out. Every successful leader goes through this. The ones who last are the ones who learn to pace themselves. I'll make sure your compensation reflects the change." My first week as VP, I worked 50 hours instead of 80. I went to a yoga class. I called an old friend from graduate school and scheduled dinner. I bought groceries and actually cooked a meal in my apartment. Small things. Normal things. Things that had nothing to do with proving anything to anyone. And I felt more like myself than I had in years. 6 months after I became VP, Morrison Associates won the industry's most prestigious award for our work on the tech campaign. The entire team was invited to the ceremony, a black-tie gala that attracted every major player in marketing. I wore a dress that made me feel powerful and feminine at the same time, my hair styled in loose waves, my makeup subtle but striking. I looked like someone who had arrived. Kyle was there too, nominated in the creative director category. He'd continued to grow, taking on more leadership responsibilities, mentoring junior creatives, becoming the kind of professional who elevated everyone around him. "You look great," he said when he saw me. "So do you." We'd reached a place of genuine mutual respect. We weren't friends exactly, but we were colleagues who valued each other's contributions. It was a strange ending to our story, but somehow it felt right. The award ceremony was long, full of speeches and industry inside jokes. When they announced the winner of our category, I felt a surge of pride as they called out our team's name. Kyle walked up to accept with me, and we stood on that stage together, representing the work we'd built as partners in a completely different sense than we'd once imagined. Later, at the after-party, I found myself alone on a balcony, looking out over the city. Mind if I join you? I turned to find a man I didn't recognize, handsome in an understated way, with kind eyes and a genuine smile. Not at all. He introduced himself as Ryan Park, a director at a consulting firm, and we fell into easy conversation about the industry, about the challenges of leadership, about the balance between ambition and life. "Can I be honest?" he said after a while. "I've been wanting to talk to you all night, but you're intimidating as hell. Youngest VP in Morrison's history, that award-winning campaign, you're kind of legendary." I laughed, surprised by how good the compliment felt. "I'm really just figuring it out as I go. Aren't we all?" We talked for an hour, and when he asked for my number, I gave it to him without hesitation. As I watched him walk away, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Not the possibility of success or achievement or proving anyone wrong. The possibility of connection. Of letting someone in. Of being vulnerable in a way that wasn't weakness but strength. Kyle found me later as the party was winding down. "Ready to head out?" "Actually, I think I'm going to stay a bit longer." He followed my gaze to where Ryan was standing, laughing with a group of colleagues. "Good for you," Kyle said, and he meant it. "He seems decent." "How can you tell from across the room?" "Because he's been looking at you like you're the most interesting person in the world, but he hasn't tried to dominate your space or attention." "That's a good sign." I smiled. "When did you become a relationship expert?" 6 months of therapy, and a lot of hard realizations. I'm practically a guru now. Right. He squeezed my shoulder, a gesture of friendship and support. "For what it's worth, Mara, I'm proud of you. Not just for the award or the promotion, but for becoming someone who can still believe in good things."
Thank you, Kyle.
That means a lot. And if this guy turns out to be an idiot, you have my full permission to make his professional life a living hell. I laughed, genuinely laughed. I'll keep that in mind. Ryan and I went on our first date 2 weeks later. He was everything Kyle hadn't been. Attentive without being overbearing, confident without being arrogant, supportive of my career without needing to compete with it. By our third date, I told him about Kyle, about the betrayal, about the 3 years I'd spent building a life in reaction to that pain. "That must have been really hard," he said simply, without drama or judgment.
It was.
"But it also made me who I am." "And who are you?" I thought about the question, about the journey from that motel room to this moment. I'm someone who knows her worth, who doesn't need validation from anyone else, who's learned that being strong doesn't mean being alone. "I like that person," he said. "I'd like to get to know her better." And slowly, carefully, I let him in. A year later, I stood in my office, looking out over the city that had seen me at my lowest and my highest. Morrison Associates had just announced another expansion, and I'd been promoted to Senior VP, overseeing multiple regions. Kyle had been promoted to Associate Creative Director, finally achieving the advancement he'd always wanted but had previously sabotaged. He was dating someone new, a graphic designer named Sarah, who seemed to genuinely appreciate him while also challenging him to be better. We still worked together, but now we did it with mutual respect and the kind of professional chemistry that only came from truly understanding each other's strengths. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryan. "Dinner at 7? I have something I want to ask you." I smiled. I had a pretty good idea what that something might be. 3 years ago, I'd walked out of an apartment with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, certain that my life was over. I'd been wrong. My life had just been beginning. The elevator dinged, and Maya poked her head in. "Ms. Chun, the board meeting is in 10 minutes. I'll be right there." I took one last look at the city, at the life I'd built from the ashes of my worst moment.
Kyle had been wrong about me.
I had amounted to something. Not despite his betrayal, but through it, beyond it, in ways neither of us could have imagined. But he'd also been right about one thing. Success wasn't enough on its own. The real victory wasn't in proving him wrong. It was in proving to myself that I could be strong and vulnerable, ambitious and connected, successful and human. I grabbed my tablet and headed to the board meeting, ready to present the next phase of expansion, ready to lead my team to new heights, ready for whatever came next. Because I wasn't running from anything anymore. I was running toward everything I was meant to be. And that made all the difference. Hey, if you enjoyed this story of revenge, redemption, and finding yourself after heartbreak, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever gotten the chance to prove someone wrong? I'd love to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.